Good evening, and welcome to another episode of Maths in an Empty Classroom with me, Mr. Sutton. This is part one of the first lesson on reciprocal trig functions, and in this video I'll be introducing you to three new trig functions and solving an equation involving one of them. So, the reciprocal trig functions, three new trig functions to learn. You'll be familiar with sine, cos and tan. We now have three new ones, cosec theta, sec theta and cot theta. And the reason that they're called the reciprocal trig functions is they are the three that we know about flipped over, the reciprocal. So cosec theta is equal to 1 over sine theta. Sec theta is 1 over cos theta. And cot theta is 1 over tan theta. So three new reciprocal trig functions that we need to know about. Okay. So let's just think about how these behave. So say for example I wanted to find the value of cosec 30 degrees. That would be the same as having 1 over sine of 30 degrees. And because you all know your exact trig values, you know that sine 30 is a half. So 1 divided by a half, which is 2. So the value of cosec 30 is 2. Similarly, if I wanted to know the value of cot of pi over 6 working in radians, I would use 1 over tan. So I would say it's 1 over tan of pi over 6. Now we know that tan of pi over 6 is root 3 over 3. So that would be 1 divided by root 3 over 3, which when you work that through and simplify that comes out as the square root of 3. So the value of cot pi over 6 is root 3. So that's how to substitute angles into the reciprocal trig functions to get values. What we're now going to look at is how to solve an equation with one of those reciprocal trig functions. So what we have here is to solve sec theta plus 20 equals negative 3 over 2. So think, okay, what do I know about sec? How could I approach this? Give it a go, pause the video and see if you can work this one out for yourselves. Okay, the important thing with this is the fact that it's a reciprocal function. So instead of sec, I'm going to use cos, but I'm not going to mess around writing 1 over cos equals and rearrange it. I'm just going to say, well, okay, if the reciprocal of sec is cos, then it must just be equal to the reciprocal of negative 3 over 2, which is negative 2 over 3. Now, you'll notice that the theta plus 20 in the bracket remains as theta plus 20 in the bracket for cos. So if you have sec of a function of theta, it becomes 1 over cos of that function. So this bracket bit isn't affected by taking the reciprocal, it stays the same. And then it becomes a standard trig equation to solve. So I have cos of theta plus 20 equals negative 2/3. So I would do cos inverse of negative 2/3 on the calculator. Checking, of course, that I'm in degrees mode. I should have done that first. And it's all good. So cos inverse of negative 2 over 3, which is 131.81. So that is my principal solution. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to draw that onto a quick cast diagram. So I'm going to say, okay, 0, 90, 180, 270, 360, A, S, T, C, and my principal solution, 131.81. Starting at 0, I go round anti-clockwise past 90, and it goes into this quadrant here, and it's this angle that's 131.81. Now that should make sense because it's ended up in the sine quadrant, And the reason it's done that is that the value of cos is negative. So I want to also draw an angle in the other quadrant where cos is negative, which is this one for tan. So not A and not C. So I would be drawing that angle in there like that, the reflection in the horizontal of this one. And this angle here then would be 131.81. But crucially, I'm going 0 to 360, so I want to start on 0 and measure anti-clockwise around. So my second solution is going to be 360 minus that 131.81. So we'll just get that, and that comes out as 228.18. Now, important, that isn't theta, because that's not what's in my bracket. This is theta plus 20. So what I now have to do is say, okay, I know that theta plus 20 is equal to 131.8 and 228.2, and subtracting 20 from each of those two values, I'm going to get that theta is 111.8 degrees to one decimal place and 208.2 degrees to one decimal place. So the crucial point to take from there, I think, is right at the start. You can change sec to cos because it's the reciprocal, and you just have to take the reciprocal of the number. Don't mess around with fractions. Reciprocals all the way. I'll see you in the next video.